My name is Joshua Hall. And I'm Peter Hall. We're the Media Maniacs because we'll review anything under the sun. I guess we should start saying thing 1 and thing 2 because that's the song that goes to, but whatever. Yeah, we're thing 1 and thing 2, the Media Maniacs, because we'll review anything under the sun. Today, we're going to be doing a reaction video to The Mysterious Mr. Enters Animated Atrocities. He talks about the Legend of Korra, book 1. So this video is almost an hour long. It's 52 minutes 59 seconds, and here we go. Man, it's taking forever to start. Sorry about that, people. Ah. Shit. There we go.
Are you ready for this?
I'm not sure.
You can do this later if you want to.
Well, thanks to you, that's not really enough. Life is a lesson in improv anyway. Let's get this one over with. So, The Legend of Korra. When I said I was going to review Season 1 for this animated atrocity, a lot of people were confused. It's not like I'm the only one on the face of the earth not to like the first season, but this show is definitely more well-liked than anything else I've reviewed thus far. Actually, I don't know if that's entirely true, and it's hard to make a comparison like that. The people who like, say, Totally Spies probably think of it as a simple entertainment or a guilty pleasure even. When it comes to The Legend of Korra, I've heard opinions range from thinking that Korra is just okay to it being one of the greatest cartoons of all time.
It is one of the greatest cartoons of all time.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it
agree.
looks fantastic, but there were just so many awkward storytelling moments, and so many little things that just built up and up into bigger and bigger problems. Some people thought that this was going to be like a joke review and I was kidding around, but no, I seriously do not like The Legend of Korra, at least the first 2 seasons. I am always honest with my opinions, if nothing else. Even during April Fools, I don't make reviews in sarcasm. What you hear from me in these reviews is pretty much my opinion, and I hope you can at least believe me on that front. I have to be blunt. There were times when this show kind of pissed me off. I want to make my
Season 4 pissed me off a lot.
I watched it for the first time ever.
What, just because of like Asami and Korra get together? No.
After finishing Avatar: The Last Airbender, I had just marathoned that show.
Milo pissed me off.
But I did in preparation to finally tackle
the whole storyline of them going off to look for Korra pissed me off. I know this is about Season 1, but I'm going to talk about Season 4. And how if you're going to do an Animated Atrocities review on The Legend of Korra, the only episode that should be on the Animated Atrocities is Remembrances. I like the Remembrances. Season 4 is probably my least favorite season of The Legend of Korra, although I still like it.
I know that's actually called Episode 5, The Spirit of Competition, but it's Episode Love Triangle, and it's always going to be Episode Love Triangle to me. But people did convince me to keep going.
I kind of agree with him on that episode.
So I put up with my issues on the series and got to Episode 12, and Episode 12 pissed me off.
Why?
If context wasn't important, I'd probably just be reviewing that one episode, but because Legend of Korra
Season 2 kind of pissed me off too. I didn't like
tackle the entire series.
Varric and Bolin's Nuktuk movie subplot.
It has a lot of that happen in 1 or 2 episodes. For what it's worth, I have watched through the entire Legend of Korra series twice, and I watched through season 1 3 times, and yes, the series does get better. Not as good as the original Avatar, but much better than the first 2 seasons.
What's wrong with seasons 1 and 2? Except Bolin and Varric's Nuktuk subplot.
I actually like The Legend of Korra better than the Avatar. As much as I love the Avatar, I like The Legend of Korra even better.
Is it because they have different villains in every season?
It's one of the reasons. Well, the first show had different villains, but they always worked for, like, Ozai or something. I mean, season 2 had its own, like, independent villain, but he was quickly subverted by Azula.
Can't forget Shin Fu and Master Yu. They were independent villains.
Talking about major villains.
They kind of were a major villain. Kind of. At least in season 2.
As this show had something that many other shows didn't have. Expectations. I go into something like the Nut Shack, for instance, and it's like, what were you expecting? However, when it came
The
to
Nut Shack? I've never even heard of that.
Well, I was expecting something like Avatar. It's not a reboot, it's not a remake, it's not a spin-off, it is a sequel. It is supposed to be a direct continuation of the first. And I had no reason to expect anything but something of similar quality that I got in the first. I won't say that Korra is a victim of high expectations, but a lot of my complaints will be from the point of view of a disappointed Avatar fan. I'm just going to be upfront and honest about that. But even if I never watched the original Avatar series, I think it's safe to say that I would not like this show. I am a writer, first and foremost, and there was so much of the show that I didn't like as a writer. There were just so many characters that I didn't like, a constantly aggravating love triangle, and some of the worst uses of Deus Ex Machina that I had ever seen. And frequent, I mean frequent, storytelling and world-building blunders. When I say world-building blunders, I don't mean that it's different from the first. I mean the terms that this doesn't logically make sense in the world that you created. A lot of people don't like the 1920s aesthetic, but I didn't mind it too much. I could see it easily working. There are only 2 times when it really got distracting though. Number 1 is these radio-style introductions. I'm going to be blunt.
Those are kind of
I hated
cool.
these vehemently, and they were constantly a pain to deal with, even in
I had no
season 3
problems
and
with
4,
those. I liked them.
especially in season 3 and 4.
Republic City is at war. After discovering that her father...
I like those introductions. I don't know what his problem with them are.
What does he mean when, like, he says that there are problems with the writing? I mean...
He already told you, like, the love triangle in the first season.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that Jinora coming out of nowhere and helping out Korra with Vatunalak. I'm not going to say Unabatu because Unabatu is stupid. Vatunalak was a Deus Machina. But I still like that ending.
This kind of serialized radio talk has been literally mocked and parodied and has never been used seriously. There is no way to take it dramatically seriously on any level. When I hear an introduction to a Korra episode, it makes me feel like I'm watching some cowboy cartoon from the 1950s or a superhero show from the 1960s. Something incredible.
I love the soundtrack in
to entertain small children.
The winner is
Startling disappearance of the West River Bridge. Rosul, the disappearance.
Incredibles.
What dastardly demon could have done such a dirty deed? This is one wild scene, Big Daddy.
Every time an episode left me off with a dramatic ending, these radio introductions would just plunge the whole thing right into the realm of ridiculous. Sure, it fits with the 1920s, but in every other way, it doesn't fit with the show. The other problem with the 1920s aesthetic for me is when they had a flashback to decades ago, and the story of the most infamous gangster that the city had ever had. Even though gangster...
Oh, come on, that was cool.
1920s thing. Sure, it uses a horse thing and buggy to get away, but it doesn't create a connection between the relatively few technology seen in the original and the more modern tech seen.
I like Jakun's origin story.
It's very hard without going into a full lecture on world building to explain why much of this doesn't work. So I'm going to give you a micro example to help showcase a macro problem with the series. On its own, you could probably get away with this, but it's mixed with several other things like it. The plate armor that the city police force uses. From a world building and a writing standpoint, this is stupid. From every angle, this is stupid.
How?
They probably included it because, hey, it looks cool and it's something different, which is something that you learn to grow out of very, very soon when you learn how to world build. But they probably said, the police officers are metal benders, so it makes sense. But when you get down to it, when you think of it with the
I think The Legend of Korra had great world building.
This doesn't make sense in any way that you look at it. Okay, metal bending is more common now. We'll put that to the side for now. But it's safe to say that you have a significant chance of now running into an opponent with a metal bending ability. It would be an absolute shame if that person wanted to, I don't know, toss a police officer around like a rag doll. Or better yet, send the metal armor inward, crushing the police officer. Lightning bending is now common enough for people to turn it into a reliable job at a power plant. Both metal bending and lightning bending are now more common. And doesn't plate armor conduct electricity? On top of that, plate armor is specifically bad at one thing.
There is such a thing as overthinking, Mr. Enter.
If metal is completely exposed to flame, the skin on the other side is going to get burned. Or if the fire is especially hot, the skin will fuse to the metal. An avatar exists in a world where a sizable portion of the population is born with built-in flamethrowers. The metal armor simply doesn't work as armor any way you slice it. To put this in perspective, it would be like a fantasy world using gold as currency, and then figuring out that mages have the ability to just pull gold out of thin air. That makes what is considered money no longer valuable, and it completely goes against the original idea of the very concept. It looks cool is not a significant reason to keep something in a fantasy world. I understand that this may sound unbelievable.
I never thought of that, but now that he mentions it, I still don't care.
Isn't like most other cartoons.
What?
It's fantasy. And on top of that, Lord of the Rings.
His reasons for not liking the metal bender armor.
Dragons style fantasy.
I mean, yeah, I guess logically what he's saying is making sense because, like, the equalizers utilized the metal bender's weakness for electricity using those gauntlets.
Anyone would be incapacitated by those gauntlets, whether they had armor or not.
Yeah, but like the metal benders were thought to be impervious to bending attacks, and they were brought down by people who could not bend, just because they had the ability to channel electricity through those gloves.
Right.
You create something amazing. It is why many people are drawn to fantasy in the first place. They want worlds they can be thoroughly invested into. The Legend of Korra,
which is something I think that the Legend of Korra accomplished.
Yep, it accomplished that for me.
Not caring how it would affect the tower as they climbed up. A fantasy show like
if you're gonna do an Animated Atrocities episode for the Legend of Korra, at least do Remembrances. That belongs in the Animated Atrocities.
I disagree.
Let me put it like this. The original established the concept of the Agni Kai, which is basically when a firebender slighted another, they would challenge each other to a duel using firebending attacks. Now, wouldn't it have been, like, really, really cool to have airbenders duel each other in a similar fashion? Well, regardless if it would look cool or not, it wouldn't fit into the world that was established, because the air nomads had a culture of peace and non-aggression. It wouldn't make sense with what has been established. You can't just write this as you go. You need to have the end of episode 12 planned before you even start on episode 1. And them just making shit up on the spot is a constant problem throughout the series. Metal prisons were frequently used in the original because into the middle of book 2,
that episode was kind of stupid.
I still kind of like it, though.
The Boiling Rock episodes were kind of stupid.
But I still kind of like them.
Metal was often used because the villains could be
the escape plans were retarded.
Yeah. But I still kind of like them, especially the second half.
I mean, they had great action and stuff, but Chitsing was a doofus.
So is Sokka.
Basically them assuming that, gee golly gosh, we could never run into a metal bender or a fire bender or a lightning bender that wanted to hurt the police.
These small details, don't you think you're nitpicking just a little?
No. This may sound like a bit of a double standard, but...
Who's the other guy that looks like, Uncle Sam?
This would be insane.
I don't know.
Avatar is different. It is a very rare genre in Western animation, high fantasy. Avatar is a franchise that rewards the keen eye. Let me put it this way. With Avatar The Last Airbender, the more that you pay attention to, the more that you notice, the better it becomes. Of course, they make a mistake here and there, like not explaining what happened to Jet. But most often, that is the case. This is a good thing. It is what truly great media does. On the first watch-through, you might notice the story and the characters. In the second watch-through, you'll notice more obscure details that end up coming back later. On the third watch-through, though, you see every nuance and every emotion poured into each frame of the character interactions, and the subtle inflections in the voice. The more that I watched The Legend of Korra...
Which is something that happened with The Legend of Korra to me.
Actually, that's not entirely true. The more things that pissed me off, I got out of it. But if you don't want to talk about little details, fine. There are larger world-building blunders. I have to say this. These are very, very rookie mistakes that I could not believe they actually made. Let's talk about pro bending. Pro bending is nothing more than a continual drain on the series and a waste of time. I feel like
I like the pro
only reason
bending.
this is in here is because they want
The
to make
episodes that
Korra
had
not
pro bending.
stereotypical in a very
I liked how
stereotypical
it was
way.
an important and
She's a tomboy,
integral
and every
part in
single
season
tomboy
1,
ever
and then they
needs to
just
play
turn it
sports.
into
A lot of
a
people say
parody
that
in
pro
season
bending is
2.
essentially Quidditch. I disagree. There is one major difference between pro bending and Quidditch. I actually know how Quidditch is played. At no point does this show explain the rules, even the main rules of pro bending. At first it seems like the goal is to have the opponents knocked over the back edge, but apparently no, you can win rounds by doing something, I don't know. Sometimes the round ends in a draw and I have no idea why, and by the time the championship rolls around, it really does feel like they're pulling fouls out of their ass and literally making up the rules as they go.
That's
Yes,
because
some
Korra's
sports don't
team was
remember
being
the
unfairly
techniques of
targeted.
in the outfield. They don't explain how the sport is played. This is because they
I like the
completely
pro
know
bending.
how the sport is played in the
And I
real
thought
world
they
before
explained
going
the
on.
rules
That's
pretty
probably
well.
why you're
You gotta knock
interested
the
in
other
the first
opponents out of the
place.
ring,
This
and
is
you
also
can't
why
do
many
it
people have a
over
hard
the
time liking
sides.
sports
Yeah, you
video
can only do it
games
towards the
over
back.
because they
And
don't
you can only
explain.
bend your
However,
element.
You can't get away with that in something like Avatar because you can't know how pro bending works because it's not a real sport. It doesn't exist in the real world.
Neither does
Harry Potter and
Quidditch.
the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone,
Well, it doesn't.
use the metric system.
I know.
Both the book and the movie, they dedicate some time to explaining the basic rules on how to play. If Harry catches the snitch, he wins. And he can even get beat up and thrown into a wall and they're still not pulling fouls out of their ass. If Korra does, I have no idea, she wins, maybe. And if she does random actions like walking over a line or throwing things at someone's head despite them trying to get points by throwing things at each other, then she gets fouls, I guess. No joke. I've looked up Wikias and supplementary materials, and I still don't know the basics of the game besides don't get flung off the bat. But apparently you don't have to throw the opponents off the back to win the game. I'm spending so much time on pro bending because Season 1 spends so much time on pro bending. It takes up
taught
a
Korra
good
how to
chunk
bend.
of the first half of the season. And
At
during
least
any
airbend.
pro bending match, because you don't know how it's played, there is no tension. And this is 1,000 times more true for the championship game, where the cheating is so blatant that even the announcer is admitting it.
Oh, this has gone too far. That water had rocks in it. Knockout! Oh, come on. Those were illegal headshots. Open your eyes, ref. Well, folks, it's a controversial call, but the Wolfbats notch a nasty knockout to win the match.
And even if Korra and her team loses, there's going to be no effect because everyone is going to have a problem with this in-universe. The actual end result of it doesn't
I'm
matter.
hungry. Let's
yeah,
get something
I
to eat
guess
after
I know
this.
who I want to win because Korra is the main character, and they do make the rivals assholes, but I don't know how she's supposed to be doing this, and it's just
I liked
nothing.
and the winner
I can make
is,
a whole supplementary
in all
video
honesty.
about everything on the sport that confuses me. For instance, going over the line basically gives you a foul. But earlier in that episode, Mako wins his first match by going over the line and pushing everyone back. I'm sure that there's a reason, and the writers knew that reason, but goddamn if they could tell the audience what that reason is. But this is all okay, because the winner doesn't matter. Every single second that we spend on pro bending doesn't matter. The final game ends up being completely rigged. The rival team completely drops out of the story, and Amon comes in and ends the championship. So all of that time we spent with the final
Those are my favorite
practicing
episodes.
and meeting the rival team ends up completely pointless. Like, from a narrative sense. It is literally wasted time. Korra
No,
meets
it's not.
Mako and Bolin before it starts, and Amon ends
I liked
it.
when
You
Amon
already
attacked the
knew that he
pro
was gonna
bending
do some
arena
fucked up
because he was
damage
symbolically
just
attacking the
now. There are these
institution
things
of
anyway.
bending.
We don't actually
That
have
was
to
an
see a
important
single game of
episode.
Korra played to know about which
And it was
story. I mean,
it was
there's a point where
ingenious to
Hitoshi
and it was
spots
ingenious to
Maki
attack the
and Mako
institution
with
of
the
bending
motorcycle. Since giving a bunch of money
in
was
order to
Hitoshi's first
officially
act on
declare
screen
war
as
against
Hiroshi,
Republic
you know,
City,
he's a
wasn't
bad
it?
guy. I'm not even kidding. Maybe this is just a writer thing, but him giving money as the first thing that he did was exactly how I knew that he was going to be a bad guy. It's a tactic from the perennial classic mystery series, Scooby-Doo. And Hitoshi is a Scooby-Doo villain.
Hiroshi.
Level 1.
Not
the guy that
Anatoshi,
you want
Hiroshi.
people to not know is the bad guy.
I think you said Taroshi.
Extremely nice, as his very first act.
I heard
And then
Anatoshi,
not
whatever.
He's probably
He got the
bad
name
guy.
wrong.
And the
It's
other part is
Hiroshi.
sometimes he's the
Hiroshi
best hero.
Sato.
Right.
Going back to the Quidditch thing, Harry Potter did this a lot, which is probably why I'm cold to the whole thing. But let's talk about this money thing, because it's another thing where there is no logical follow-through. Bolin and Mako are pro-benders. However, pro-bending doesn't give them enough money to fund pro-bending. But they have no other job on the side, at the start anyway. And apparently they have plenty of time, since Korra has time to practice her airbending. What it ends up feeling like is that they're avoiding any sense of getting a job to spend their time and money that they don't have on nothing more than a hobby. I mean, if they were pro athletes and actually making a living off of this, then it would make sense, but in the end, no, it doesn't. Sure, they're able to live in an apartment owned by the arena manager, but it really feels like it's not their best option and they could just look for another apartment and get out of this whole charade. As I said, Korra is a series that punished me the more that I paid attention. The more that I wanted to know, the more pissed off it made me. Every time that I watch Korra, I notice more and more things wrong. The biggest hallmark of this is in the first episode. After an admittedly nice prologue, we're immediately set off with this line.
That was kind of corny.
Avatar, you gotta deal with it.
In my experience, there's really only two reasons that you'd write that line. Either you have way too much confidence in what's to follow, or you have absolutely none at all. It's become a common meme by both fans and detractors of the episode. This is because, in classic Avatar fashion, there's a lot of subtlety in this one line, especially if you're fresh off of the original. You see, in the original show, they literally said that it took years for the Avatar to master all of the elements. Aang described it as
Yeah, that
prodigy,
was a
and so
major
with the
Deus
pressure
Ex
of the
Machina.
ending world
I'm not gonna
and the
lie.
oppressive regime took
But
I think that they were trying to demonstrate how different Korra fundamentally is from Aang. Aang didn't want to be the Avatar. Korra embraced being the Avatar.
Yeah, but he's right about this. They did previously establish that it traditionally took avatars years to master all the elements from the time they
Yeah, but Korra was a fighter. That's why she mastered the physical bending style so quickly. Except airbending.
I think the reason why they had her master 3 of the 4 elements so quickly as a child is because they made the series so short. They kind of had to, but it's still a major ass pull. I agree with them on that.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Kind of bothered me, but not to the point where I didn't want to watch the show. They kind of had to because they made every season of The Legend of Korra half the length of an Airbender season, so it's still a major ass pull.
It's going to be abrasive about it, specifically to be different than the original, regardless if or not.
That's one of the things I so appreciated about Season 3 and Season 4 is that Korra didn't get better like she did at the end of Seasons 1 and 2.
Strictly the order of the elements that would make it difficult for the Avatar to learn their
They had a major ass pull at the end of Season 1 where she loses her bending, but then Aang gives it back to her, and then she loses her connection to Rava and the other avatars, and I'm so confused as to what happened. Did Aang and the other avatars just die in the spirit world when Unalaq severed the connection with Rava? I don't get that.
It was change. Her main arc in conflict was fearing the change brought by
I think
and the possibility of losing her bending.
Mr. Enter is overthinking some things, but he does have good points, like Korra learning 3 of the 4 elements when she was 4. That's pretty big, but it was unavoidable. Seeing as how they made the series half the length of the last Airbender.
Then one day, Korra gets so angry that she ends up bending fire. It's then told to her that she's the Avatar, and at last, she finally feels special. She puts a lot of stock into this, and it becomes some personal issues that she has to deal with as the series goes on. To tell you the truth, looking back, I see so many more possibilities with Korra having trouble waterbending instead of airbending. Sometimes the most interesting possibilities are not always the most obvious one. Sure, Aang started with airbending, and they were probably afraid that they couldn't make airbending more interesting. But using the choices that they did, they took a lot of interest out.
Korra was a waterbender, so she should have the easiest time learning waterbending.
Because we see him grow as a person and grow more powerful as things goes on. It's harder to get invested in Korra's arc because she already starts out powerful. This kind of works if you're going for like a Shakespearean tragedy kind of thing, which they almost went through, and we'll get to that much later. But no, in the end it comes as Korra knows everything but airbending because Aang knew airbending and nothing else. So this is how the first episode starts. And then the flying bison comes in. Last time I checked, Appa was the last flying bison. So I guess that flying bison procreate asexually. And then, Katara references Zuko's mother in a story.
They found a herd in season 2. Well, at least they said they did anyway.
I've been reading all about your old adventures. I've been dying to ask you.
Yeah.
What happened to Zuko's mom?
They answered that question in a spin-off comic.
Granddad, you're old.
On its own, I could let that slide. But these three things happen in the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and they paint a very insulting picture when strung together. It's like, fuck you, we're changing everything established about bending, and you gotta deal with it. Fuck you, flying bison are alive. Continuity? Who gives a fuck about that? It's just a sequel. You want to hear about Zuko's mother? The only thing that we left hanging in the original? Well, fuck you. Buy our graphic novel. You don't get to hear about it here. I know.
That was pretty funny.
One episode, any episode of the original, can give you the picture that after
I still love the Legend of Korra. You're overthinking.
Rare and exotic animal. This is why at one point.
And Avatar: The Last Airbender had its own issues.
There is an explanation for this later on.
I mean,
Great Divide, Fortune Teller.
I like those episodes. The only episode I didn't like was Nightmares and Daydreams.
It's a good thing Zuko never mentioned them.
Fortune Teller still sucks, and it's the worst episode of season 1.
Still like it.
Yeah.
Still hate it. Yeah. Great Divide too.
Yes, that explanation didn't really help things in the end at all. The worst parts of when the show gets good is when they try to explain away the problems of season 1 and 2. In a manner of, yeah, we were stupid back then. Just don't worry about it. While it's a nice effort, it doesn't change what we actually had. It doesn't help the explanation.
Wonder what happened to Zuko's mom in part 30 of the theater season, at the end of Avatar season 3? Well, fuck you! Get a virus, nothing, no, you can't.
Has ever had any positive results ever. You can't because it doesn't happen. Much of Korra's training has her kept away in an isolated place from most of human civilization, to the point where she doesn't know what money is. And halfway through episode
Which they explain about in season 2.
Korra doesn't know how to people well.
Korra doesn't know how to people well. What a phrase! Korra doesn't know how to...
So no one has bothered to teach the Avatar any oratorical skills. I mean, that's understandable. She's just supposed to be a diplomat, a spiritual leader, a celebrity, a politician, a hero, a role model. But nah, talking to people, that's not in the job description at all. She just has to shoot shit with fire and wind, and everything will be okay. It's strange when the writing has the exact same flaws as Korra herself, believing that being the Avatar is nothing more than fighting. Then Korra gets into a fight, and I really want to
basically
point this out. It's minor, but I love how the first fight in the series goes.
His beasts with the Legend of Korra are exactly like the nostalgia chick's beasts with the Little Mermaid.
They know that she's a waterbender. They firebend at her, and only then do they earthbend. It's like, what is this? The tutorial fight for the video game? Attention to detail. It's kind of important. Actually, no, I take that back. They do pay attention to detail in some of the worst areas possible. During this fight, Korra vandalizes innocent people's stores and breaks up public roads. Then she runs from the police. During this chase, she plows one of the officers into a block of ice that she created, and she smiles about it. This is more or less the introduction to our hero. Even when Aang and his group were fighting some of the worst people imaginable, as far as I can tell, they didn't smile about it. But no, Korra commits a crime, and then she resists arrest, and then she smiles as she assaults a police officer. And in the end,
that's because she's fundamentally different from Aang. She's a rebel. Aang was not a rebel.
Yeah.
She's a rebel. Aang was not a rebel.
She's in the next episode for being too harsh and serious on her. I love Korra's line at the end of episode 1.
I saw a lot of the city today, and it's totally out of whack.
Yeah, like you needing money to buy stuff, and it being illegal to fish in the park, and cops trying to arrest you after you vandalize shops and roads, and it's peaceful protests. And honestly, the city's a lot cleaner than any city of Republic City size has any right to be. I suppose that brings us to the Bender-non-Bender conflict. This is Season 1's biggest failing. I could go on for ages about this, but I can sum it up in 3 words. Show, don't tell. And this is one of the worst
Which is
examples
what they
that I've
did.
seen in a high fantasy
Show, don't tell.
The franchise as acclaimed as Avatar, I never thought that I'd see this bungled up this badly. From the start, we don't see any actual evidence of benders suppressing non-benders. Except, I guess, the gangsters, but they're criminals. And the police come to arrest them in the end anyway. Besides this, we see absolutely no examples of benders oppressing non-benders. We should see non-benders being denied service at stores, being denied educations, kids getting teased by other kids.
You know, the whole
police
point
looking
of
the
Amon
other
was
way.
that
yeah, all this is harsh, and it might be
it's kind of like black people think that they're being oppressed by white people. It isn't really happening, but the media and the politicians say it is. That was the whole point.
It's happening, but they're overblowing it.
Well, that was the whole point of Amon's revolution, is that Amon was like over-exaggerating it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
On the surface. Or on the other hand, if Amon was making a big stink out of nothing and there really was no prejudice, which is what the narrative is showing me, then there's no way that this many people would be in attendance. Why this many people from the start would have an issue with benders? And quite honestly, not only is this writing lazy, this writing is cowardly. You picked writing a story about prejudice, okay? Do it. Show it to me. It can't be done on a kid show. Bullshit. Zootopia did it only 6 years later. While that movie has its problems, it's basically season 1 of Korra done massively better. Once again, Korra has interesting ideas. The idea of benders and non-benders having trouble coexisting is an interesting concept and something that really feels like it would be in the world of Avatar. It feels like the proper conflict for this franchise. But the only time that this really comes forward is after Amon makes things worse, and worse for non-benders. Do you honestly expect me to think that his entire congregation is okay with making things worse and worse for non-benders because of his direct actions? No, the only time that any of his followers turn on him is when he's revealed to be a bender, and not when, say, Tarlok uses him as a scapegoat to actually start creating oppressive laws. Once again, I feel that I have to bring up tone. Remember, this is a show that has a much different tone than most mainstream Western
And they had
cartoons.
benders being and they had non-benders being oppressed by benders. And see, in the aftermath, when the police
Yeah, but that was because of what Amon was doing. It wasn't already happening.
That's
He
true.
has the perfect voice for a villain, in such a way that I kind of feel sorry for the voice actor.
My quest for equality began many years ago. After I take your bending away,
Amon was probably like
thank you all.
riding the coattails of like the resentment from the 100 Years of War. How the Fire Nation almost took over the entire world. He was probably riding the coattails of that.
Yeah.
That tragic event.
Coattails of that.
Equalize the world.
I mean, could you just imagine this guy trying to order pizza? But take away the voice and the intimidating figure and the shots and some of the random lines that are kind of stereotypical. He's basically V from V for Vendetta, or literally any other social reform villain. He had potential. Like I keep saying, there were ideas here. I can imagine that after firebenders nearly destroy the world, there would be a lot of tensions towards the idea of bending. I can imagine him capitalizing on a social divide. To his credit, the cinematic angles, the inflections in his voice, they do make him very intimidating. That is until we learn who he really is. The guy leading the rebellion against benders is a bender himself. You know, I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but Pixar has some rules for storytelling and animation. And one of the rules is discard the first thing you think of because it's the obvious option, and your audience is going to pick up that first. Amon's belief is pretty much fake. Do you know what we call a twist that creates a product worse than it would have been if the character or story was exactly what we thought they were? We call that a Shyamalan movie.
What a twist!
But Amon's not just a bender, though. He's a bloodbender, pseudo-spirit bender. Okay, let's talk about the...
I had actually no problem with this.
I still kind of wish that he did get his powers from the spirits, because that would have been an interesting tie-in to season 2.
Remember this infamous clip? That number was really
On
high.
the one hand, I like how
By the
they
end of the series, the power levels
made
have
blood.
literally over 1
They
million.
made it
So
possible
going
for
back
blood
to
bending to
talking
take away
about
another
power
bender's
level
bending, but I still kind of wish that he did get his powers from the
This is
spirits.
probably going to be one of the harder points for me to explain. Metal bending
You actually don't
and blood bending
mind?
all got more powerful in the modern era. You see, with lightning bending, to use it, you needed to be a level 10 badass, completely devoid of emotions while you were doing it. It was dangerous and elusive, only reserved for 3 people in the entire series. Even the Fire Lord couldn't do it. Now it's so common that power plant workers can do it, even ignoring the how.
The Fire Lord
This doesn't
could
make
lightning
cooler
bend.
or
Oh
more
yeah,
powerful.
redirect
It makes it less
lightning. Never mind.
intimidating, It makes it weaker, and it makes it less impressive. And now it becomes counterintuitive.
You know,
Don't make these characters more powerful by giving them lightning.
it makes sense for lightning bending and metal bending to be common 70 years later in the Legend of Korra, dude. You're overthinking it.
That most affects the sequel series. The worst example of this is probably metal bending. Even ignoring the other world-building problems, metal bending gave characters a special advantage. So if you want any tension, you pull platinum mechs out of your ass. These robots have pure metal, so you can't bend it. It's almost like metal bending isn't common in this room anymore. But there are other weapons that can be used against it. At some point, it's like you have little kids saying, I win times infinity. Well, I win times infinity plus 1. And then your series ends with a giant kaiju mech made of platinum, more platinum than exists on the planet, with a gun that shoots atom bombs on its arm. In a series that we're supposed to take relatively seriously. The
I
power grid
took
is probably
Legend of
the
Korra
most problem
seriously.
with the series, even beyond the first 2 seasons. It's also the problem that has the most chances of damaging a future Avatar series. When it gets to something like the end of season 4, how do you top that? You know, without getting totally fucking ridiculous. The other villains are Tarlok, which is your evil, stereotypical bureaucrat, and Hitoshi. I will say this once again. Hitoshi
Okay,
is a Scooby-Doo villain.
you're right.
A sweet, innocent, harmless guy who
Hitoshi.
was so nice
But it's
that when
Hiroshi,
everyone
dude.
asked
Get the
for it,
name
turns out
right.
to be the secret bad guy. He works for it.
Hiroshi,
Also, for
dude.
the
Get the
inventor of
name
the
right.
car, he is a
Come on, doesn't that kind of
moron.
piss
In
you off that
episode
he's
7,
getting the
away
name
with
wrong?
conspiring with the revolution. How does Korra and the gang catch on to him? He himself plants an anonymous tip that lures Korra and her friends to his secret factory. If he never did this, he would have gotten away with everything, and Amon might have won. He would have been totally in the clear. And I don't think we ever actually get a reason to why he does this. I guess
He wanted them out of the way.
But I'm pretty sure Amon wanted to do that. I'm
That
not
was a
too
cool
keen on really
twist.
any of the characters. Ignoring Korra's outbursts in the first episode, she seems to be a character you really like or really don't. A lot of people say that she's the Mary Sue, but I don't totally go along with that. She gets a lot closer to that than a character should reasonably get, to be sure. Being badass in 3 elements from the start, getting away with assaulting
I want to watch
officers,
The Legend of
and
Korra
destroying
and The Last
artifacts,
Airbender again
having the
sometime.
justification to blow up at an authority figure after said incidents. Having 2 boys fawning over her, being able to do whatever she wants in love and being completely justified no matter who it hurts, learning metal bending instantly. However, she does have her moments of weakness and her fear that really do save her, especially in episode 4. I did really feel for her fears of losing her bending abilities to Amon, and it's clear that she puts her personal value into being the Avatar and having said powers, which, yes, is a character flaw. However, the rest of the characters are, I'm going to be generous and say a mixed bag. Let's start with Milo. He is the worst. The absolute worst. There's no qualifiers. He is just the worst.
Bowen's kind of bad too.
Gargoyle's school of character annoyance. He is one of my least favorite kid characters of all time. In one season, he managed to beat out DW, who had 17 seasons to work up her position. I am not joking. He drains every scene that he's in with his grating voice, these stupid facial expressions, and constant toilet humor. One of the worst moments in the entire series is when he's using an airbending fart attack.
That was funny.
Oh, I'm sorry, he does this twice.
I didn't like Milo all that much either, but he became intolerable in season 4. That's when I really didn't like him.
Kind of dignity, and if they did the opposite of that, they could really stand out. One of the things that led to seasons 3 and 4 being better was that they aged Milo up into something more tolerable. The other 2 airbending kids
No, he was more intolerable in season 4.
Their competition. Then we have General Iroh, who is a general and not an admiral.
He was!
A navy.
He ate poison berries
An
and
admirable.
food.
So, in Korra, we have this character called General Iroh, and he has Zuko's voice, even though Zuko is still alive in Korra and has someone else's voice. And this character is named exactly the same as another character who appears later in the same series. That's not confusing at all. You want to talk about redundant, though? I don't think he did one thing of actual plot relevance. He comes in with the Navy, but they get sunk. He sends out a message to tell the reinforcements to stay away, but it gets intercepted, so they come anyway. He comes up with a plan, but it only fails and gets him and the others captured, in the exact same way that it would have if it was made by someone without any military expertise at all. Then he ends up in a battle where he takes on an air force, but Korra would have beat Amon with or without him. All he really does is send a plane into Amon's mask on the Statue of Liberty, which they probably would have taken off anyway after the battle was over. And then for the rest of the series, he basically stands on a boat and gets orders not to do shit. I watched through the entire series twice, remember? And that's all I remember about this guy.
True.
He stays on a boat, gets asked to help, and then gets orders not to help. Bowen's alright for the side. He's still in the highlight of season 1, but he doesn't get tremendous material until he works his very
No,
actor.
I agree with him about General Iroh.
Stupid. Then there's Asami. I know that a lot of people like her too, but Season 1 is not her best. For starters, she's meant to show the power of non-benders, but she can only really fight when she's wearing a glove that essentially gives her bending abilities. Of course, she's not wearing this in Episode 8 when Tarlok uses water bending to grab her by the wrists, even though she probably should in this scene. And grabbing her by the wrists makes her entirely helpless. I guess this show really did want to invoke the 1920s because that's the last time that this was dramatically acceptable. A badass female being rendered helpless by someone grabbing her shoulder or her wrist. It's such a stupid, outdated cliche, and a relic of the past when female characters were expected to be nothing other than damsels in distress. Hey, Asami, remember those self-defense classes that you talked about? I thought that they might have taught you how to get out of a hold, especially one where he's only grabbing your wrists. But no, we need to sacrifice the plot for the sake of the plot. I'm just gonna be honest. He looks like a background character. With your main character, someone should be able to point out who they are from a crowd, with just a screenshot. But he looks like literally everyone else in Republic City. If you showed someone who had never seen the series a picture or a random clip where no one was just talking, he was just on screen, they probably wouldn't tell that he was supposed to be a main character. But Lin at least has his bright green eyes. I know that Mako is supposed to be a citizen of Republic City, and he definitely looks the part, but it's distracting. Personality-wise, I guess he's supposed to be the shy, reserved, tough type guy, but... Alright, you can't talk about Mako and Asami without talking about the stupid love triangle. The love triangle sucks.
Yeah, that was stupid.
It sucks.
It did.
I have no idea who in the right mind thought this would be a good idea, why it's included into this. The series is rushed as it is, and this just takes up so much time. Not only that, but the love triangle makes everyone involved look like a piece of shit. Mako flip-flops back and forth, and Asami feels forced into romantic tension. Seriously, Mako flips back and forth at the drop of a hat. Seriously, he has a set plan and wants to go with Asami, but the second that someone else shows interest in Korra, he decides to go with her. Korra knowingly gets in between the relationship of Mako and Asami, and knowingly breaks Bolin's heart in the process. And during all of this, Mako says that he doesn't want Bolin getting hurt. And then he goes out of his way to do the thing that would hurt his younger brother the most. Even Pema, giving advice about this, sounds like she broke Tenzin up with his former girlfriend for her own selfish desires. That's not exactly what happens, but that's what it sounds like she's talking about. Not helping is that following her advice to the T is what caused all of this pain. And they spend so much time on this. Cut out the pro-bending and the love triangle, and guess what? You've got time to fully establish the bending non-bender conflict, the characters, Korra's struggle to become the Avatar, Amon's rise to power, and that fucking ending. Seriously, the love triangle eats up all of episode 5, and then it never seems to fucking stop. Well, until episode 12. In episode 12, specifically the ending of episode 12, killed off any goodwill that the series might have otherwise built up with me. Deus Ex Machina doesn't even begin to describe it. I'm going to assume that you at least heard what happened, and yes, there are obviously going to be spoilers. Throughout the story, Amon is leading a rebellion against bending, because he has the power to take bending away. And it seems like he has won. He's captured Tenzin and the other airbenders.
The worst Deus Machina was when Jinora showed up out of nowhere, and I guess gave Korra back her fragment of Rava to help Korra disintegrate Vatunalok.
She didn't give Korra back Rava. She showed Korra where Rava was inside of Vatunalok.
Yeah.
With the actual plots. I'm sorry, but it's a bad story. After the fact,
That was a pretty bad Deus Machina.
There is no reason that Korra should have the ability to airbend. Amon has never had any difficulty taking away anyone's powers. He was just about to equalize a family of airbenders in front of a stage show of people. Amon just removed Korra's bending ability, but I guess he ignored her airbending. Maybe Amon, the chess master genius manipulative bastard, was just so stupid that he didn't realize the Avatar could bend air. This also has two Deus Ex Machinas in one moment. After episode 2, Korra struggled.
She couldn't airbend, so Amon bloodbending her and removing her airbending forced her
removing her bending.
removing her other bending, forced her to use airbending.
Right.
Training in airbending at all. We don't see her struggle and fail or have hope or sparks that she's finally getting it. It's just she can randomly airbend while not knowing how to airbend at the end because reasons. Actually, no, not because reasons, because there are no reasons. In fact, it was established that to airbend you need to put aside worldly concerns. And at this moment, Korra is concerned about more things than she has ever been in the past. On top of this, we need to have a bunch of other cliches thrown into the mix. Amon has the entire city in his grasp. He has as much power as he could possibly want or need. He has the world's armies defeated, and super technology that no one has ever heard of before. And even ignoring that, he has enough physical skill to best anyone and everyone in combat. So at the last second, he decides to ignore all of this and bloodbend Korra for no other damn reason except to get himself revealed as a bloodbender. You could argue that he was getting cocky for the aforementioned reasons, but it's just such a cliche, and it doesn't do any favors for his character. He went through the effort to paint up his face with a scar, but he didn't go through the effort to make sure that it wasn't water soluble. I mean, tattoos in this world do exist, and Amon never had a reason to not be marked up at any point in the future, and then he ends up revealing to everyone that he's a waterbender for no reason. Sure, waterbender could have helped him evade drowning, however, there was no reason for him to make this over-the-top water tornado in front of everyone. He could have just propelled himself to the surface and swam on top of the water. Oh, but I haven't even gotten to the worst part. All of this is small potatoes, except what happens next. Amon is revealed to be a bender, so all of the anti-bending sentiment he created and capitalized on, it just goes poof. It's gone. Forever. Even though these people, incredibly angry at benders, have just been lied to by another one of those bending scum. They've been manipulated, and this bender helps spark laws that oppress non-benders even further. But nah, because Amon is a bender, we're gonna forget all that. It's all good, no problems here. I want to start by talking about what surrounds this. Between the Amon, Deus Ex Machina...
They couldn't focus on the bender-non-bender conflict with Korra's uncle
I'm not joking.
coming through and like them focusing on the spirit world and all that.
I still kind of wish that Amon really got his powers from the spirit world, because it would have been an interesting intro into season 2.
We just saw a murder-suicide in a Nickelodeon cartoon.
Let's watch The Punisher after this.
Alright. What do you have against this scene? This scene was like cool. It was sad and cool.
It will be just like the good old days.
After this, we cut to Korra. Though she's won, she's distraught. She has put so much stock into her bending abilities, and now they're gone. This is her worst nightmare realized. Being Avatar and being able to bend is what made her Korra, and while she can still airbend, she's still not very good at it. She's a mere novice, and now she feels like she's nothing special. She goes off on her own, tearfully looks over the edge of a cliff, and at her lowest moment, she feels that she doesn't even have the ability to end it at this point. This moment is amazing, detached from what comes before it and what comes after it. This moment alone would have made everything, every pointless, stupid, annoying thing worth it to me, if they more or less didn't take everything back. Season 2 opened up with something meaningful, like Korra struggling to cope with the loss of an ability that she thought that she could never live without. There are so many themes and stories you can tell. Yeah, that's strange. Taking away some of her abilities actually gives her more story potential. Who'd have thought? It's just one of the basic rules of drama. Even beyond Korra, the city is upside down. Benders and non-benders are hostile to each other. So many people have lost abilities that they require for not only basic living, but to do their jobs. Hell, the town's power grid might
but like...
But no,
every season progressed. Like, the first season, she was able to, like, bounce back quickly. The second season, she was able to bounce back, but not as quickly. The third season, she was almost...
Still bounced back pretty quickly once she reconnected with Rava.
Yeah, not as quickly. And then, like, in the third season, she was poisoned and almost killed, and she spends the entire fourth season recovering. So every season was a progression.
If you think you can, tell me. I am curious. Give me one reason that the ending of the season 1 being written this way is a good thing. And I mean that from a narrative.
Because they did that in season 4.
It's obviously a good thing in universe.
They did?
How does this in any
He was
way
talking about how, like, she lost her identity. They did what he wanted them to do in season 1 at the start of season 4.
And told them that it was going to be a miniseries, and then 1 season, and then 4 seasons. With all due respect, that doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm sure Nickelodeon did that, but this is written like they originally planned for more seasons, but then were forced down to 1 and arbitrarily needed to end it on a happy note, cutting off future plot lines and possibilities. Not the other way around. Seriously, nothing here is broken in the right way to lead to more possibilities. everything wrong about this ending. Everything feels like they were just trying to cut things short. One thing that I am tired of is these season's flaws being excused because of executive meddling. Yes, executive meddling definitely did happen. It's shit, and it's a legitimate reason to why many of the flaws cropped up. But an explanation of why something is bad is not an excuse to why something is bad. And if you don't believe me, do you know what else was made worse because of unnecessary studio interference? The live-action movie. I'm not saying that it would have been good without studio interference, and I'm not saying that Korra is as bad as the live-action movie, far from it. But a lot of the problems with the live-action movie were caused by behind-the-scenes issues. Like, for instance, the race bending. Why did they cast a white girl to play Katara? Because that was someone the studio wanted to play her. Have to have the rest of the village and her family look like her now. After they filmed the beginning, the studio was like, oh shit, this is actually going to be expensive. And they mismanaged the budget, leaving the film without money to complete some scenes. Which is why the bending looks awful in the movie. Do any of these facts make The Last Airbender any better as a movie? That might help you forgive the production or look at it in another light, but it doesn't change what the movie is. What happened in The Legend of Korra behind the scenes was unjust and unfortunate. But they don't make Season 1 or Season 2 any better as a result. Look, I don't need something to be perfect to enjoy it. Although this review might not help that impression. The original Avatar, The Last Airbender, is one of my favorite shows of all time. But it's not perfect. And yes, I am just as critical of that show as I am on this one. Avatar The Last Airbender mostly doesn't have these problems. Although it does have some of them. Avatar The Last Airbender is not perfect. Even ignoring episodes like Battle of the Water Tribe, there are things
I like that
like
episode.
spirit bending, which was always a bullshit cop-out, and the original's ending. Do you know my problem with the original's ending when Aang was fighting the Fire Lord? This line.
Selfless duty calls you to sacrifice your own spiritual needs and do whatever it takes to protect the world.
That line there, with me, it's up there with the Korra's on the Avatar you have to deal with it line. Spirit bending was actually narratively established, and that's not why it's a cop-out. It was established that Aang would have to kill the Fire Lord, and he would have to get over himself. But in the end, Aang doesn't. He chickens out. The narrative, what was just told to me, was that he selfishly put his own spiritual needs ahead of the needs of the world when the time finally came down to it.
But he still beat the Fire Lord.
Taking the third option became a cowardly cop-out. And even with this in mind, the 4-part finale, Sozin's Comet, is one of my favorite things ever. Greatness isn't an absence of flaws, but in how much an audience is willing to deal with the flaws and take them in stride. The peaks in the original are much more noticeable than the valleys. And Iroh forgiving Zuko just like that, it forgives everything. Melon Lord forgives everything. But when it comes down to it...
Melon Lord forgives everything? What?
Didn't give these things the strength they needed.
He made a lot of good points about The Legend of Korra, like...
He did, but
I still like it.
He's overthinking it.
They did end the first season like there wouldn't be any other seasons. He does have a point there. And it was a major Deus Machina.
Every season had a Deus Ex Machina, but I still like the series.
They didn't bother you?
No.
Except when it wants to become stilted and uncanny.
Are there any instances where a Deus Ex Machina does bother you?
I'd have to think about it.
Korra fails at its heart. It constantly meanders around, not really knowing what it's doing. It spends time on so much irrelevant bullshit that ends up not mattering. We spend so much time on pro-bending. It turns out that the final match result doesn't matter as a rival sports team drops out of the plot. And the final match was rigged anyway. So meeting these guys, training up for the final match, what does it matter in the
I
end?
like the whole pro-bending subplot, especially because Amon attacked it as a symbol against bending.
So much time on her fearing?
Yeah.
We spend so much time on a love triangle. And we focus on this instead of a plot line and world that actually matters. Why do people get so much out of anything that happened before the beginnings? And if you are new to Korra, I'd recommend that you start at the beginnings. It's almost like a self-realization that anything before then was pretty much shit, because in that episode, Korra is suffering from amnesia, and they basically reestablish everything that
Season 2 had a lot of problems, though. I'm not gonna lie, but I still like it a lot.
Season 2 didn't have any problems. I didn't have any problems with Bolin, Nuktuk Adventures, or anything.
I also didn't like the Bolin and Eska subplot.
That was funny!
I need to go. this far out of my way and spend months making an hour-long review. But the more things that you end up liking, the more enjoyable your media viewing experience actually is in the long run. You're able to enjoy something that I can't, and that's something that I'm never going to have. It doesn't mean that you're lesser or your opinions are worth less. You may be just seeing something that I'm not. Or you just don't care about the points that I brought up. They're not as important to you as the good things that may or may not be there. That's fine. Remember that this is a show that I so wanted to like. I wanted to like it at every possible opportunity. But at the end, I just couldn't. I'm still a fan of the Avatar franchise, and I am eagerly anticipating whatever comes from the series in the future. Whatever a third book series will be like. And that's all I have to say on the matter. After all this, I think I need a vacation.